I stepped out of the chum tent while the sky was still pitch black. The temperature outside had surely dropped below -60 degrees Celsius, perhaps even lower. The moment I pushed aside the reindeer hide covering the door, a blast of frigid air stabbed straight into my face like thousands of needles, making my eyes sting and tears freeze instantly on my lashes. My breath escaped as a thick white cloud, only to solidify immediately into tiny ice crystals that pattered down onto the snow in front of me. I pulled my reindeer fur hood higher, but within seconds, fresh snow had coated the fur, hardening into a layer like silver plating. My heavy Valenki boots were weighed down even more by snow packed thick on the soles and clinging stubbornly to the legs of my pants. Each step had to be lifted high, otherwise the snow would drag the boot down, causing my foot to slip and send me crashing immediately. Here, falling isn't just painful. Falling is a death risk. The village path was now nothing but a flat, endless strip of snow, knee-deep. I followed the faint, shallow depressions someone had left the day before, but the night wind had already filled most of them in. On both sides stood larch trees, motionless like stone pillars, their sparse branches bowed heavily under thick snow. A small branch snapped and fell, shattering into glittering ice fragments on the snow's surface. A little farther away was the wooden fence of a neighbor's house, now just white ice blocks, the wood completely swallowed by snow. I heard a faint, very weak cry. Looking down, I saw an Arctic hare lying right in the middle of the path. It wasn't moving. Its ears stood straight up, eyes wide open, its pure white fur now rigid as if dipped in water and flash frozen. One front paw was still raised in midair, as though it had tried to leap away the instant the cold locked it in place. Snow clung to its belly, its tail, every delicate whisker. It had died last night, probably only minutes after leaving its burrow in search of food. I crouched and touched it lightly. Its body was cold as stone, not a trace of warmth left. A few dozen meters farther, I spotted an Arctic fox curled tightly beneath a dwarf willow. Its tail covered its nose, the familiar posture foxes use to conserve heat. But the tail had frozen solid. Snow had piled so thick that only the sharp tip of one ear protruded like an ice spear. It wasn't sleeping. It had died in that exact position, trying to shield its nose and lungs from the murderous cold. The wind picked up, snow whipping horizontally at eye level, blurring everything. I narrowed my eyes and pulled my scarf tight over my mouth and nose. Ahead, a herd of reindeer stood motionless in the wide, snowy field. They didn't move. Their thick white coats were now encrusted with snow and ice. Their large antlers glittered like glass sculptures. The nearest one had its eyes wide open but unblinking. Its final breath had frozen into long icicles dangling from its nostrils. It died while digging through snow for lichen, the thin, fragile moss that was its only lifeline in this winter. The others formed a circle, the way living reindeer protect their calves. Now they were all statues of ice. Near the Indigirka River, the surface had frozen into a gigantic mirror, dusted with fine snow. On the ice lay a school of Arctic char trapped when the water suddenly locked solid. Their silver scales still shimmered, fins erect, mouths gaping as if gasping one last time. A man stood there since early morning, slicing thin strips with his knife. His breath froze and fell in soft patters onto the river ice. He handed me a piece of fish hard as rock. I had to hold it in my mouth for a long time until it slowly melted, the sweet, piercing cold spreading across my tongue before numbing my throat. That was stroganina, the most familiar dish here, but also the clearest proof that eating in this place isn't about enjoyment. It's about survival. Farther along the riverbank, a Siberian brown bear lay huddled under a bush. It hadn't gone into hibernation. It died en route to finding a den, its thick fur blanketed in white snow, black claws gleaming with frost, mouth still open, exposing sharp teeth. Snow clung to its nose, its tongue, every hair around its eyes. Not far away, an Amur tiger lay crouched in its hunting stance, body low, long tail frozen stiff across the ground, golden eyes wide with power, yet veiled by a thin layer of ice. Its tawny black-striped coat was now snow-white. Its whiskers had turned into fragile metallic threads. I paused beside an abandoned sled. The Yakut horse that had pulled it was completely frozen solid. Its white mane was snow-covered, front legs still raised mid-gallop, its last breath frozen into long tubes hanging from its nostrils. On the sled, bundles of dry grass were now hard as stone, each stalk thick with snow. A sack of fermented mare's milk arag hung on the side, frozen into a perfect round block, its surface crusted with snow. Tap it lightly and it would shatter into sweet, icy milk shards. The wind grew fiercer, snow blinding. High on a branch perched a snowy owl, its round yellow eyes staring. But its wings were spread and frozen mid-flight. It fell straight down into the snow. The wings cracked with a sharp snap, white feathers scattering. Snow coated its hooked beak, its talons, every tail feather. Passing a small lake, I saw a Nerpa seal lying motionless on the ice. Its thick blubber hadn't saved it from last night's blizzard. Its glossy fur was now white with snow. Its round black eyes frozen wide open, long whiskers transformed into glittering ice strands. Snow clung to its nose, flippers, every fold of skin. The farther I walked from the village, the more it felt like a world already dead. A Siberian wolf lay crouched beside a tree, ears erect and frozen, tail curled around its paws but rigid as wood. Snow blanketed its muzzle, its bared fangs, the fur along its neck. It died while stalking reindeer. Beneath a dwarf willow, a cluster of tiny lemmings lay scattered. Each frozen mid-escape, tiny legs raised, short tails stiff. The sun rose a little higher, but the light remained feeble, a cold gray. I saw a Siberian red squirrel hanging upside down from a branch, bushy tail frozen pointing skyward, front paws still clutching a pine nut, snow covering its red fur, small ears, black nose. Across the gray sky, a golden eagle flew low. Its wings spread wide, then froze mid-beat. It plummeted straight into the snow, wings shattering, white feathers drifting down. I turned back toward the village as darkness began to fall again. On the way, I passed an abandoned tent. Outside lay a Yakut sled dog curled up, ears flattened and frozen, tail wrapped around its nose but rigid. Snow covered its muzzle, its eyes, every hair on its neck. Back inside the tent, I brushed thick snow off my coat, boots, and hood. Everything I wore was heavy with ice. I sat by the small fire, sipped hot reindeer meat soup, chewed thin slices of ice-cold stroganina, drank warm reindeer milk tea, just enough to get the blood flowing again. Eating here isn't about pleasure. It's a heavy part of the fight to survive. Most food comes straight from the surrounding nature or the herds. Reindeer meat eaten raw and frozen, smoked, boiled, grilled over fire. Arctic char sliced thin and eaten straight from the river ice. Animal fat provides the vital calories to maintain body heat. Organs, liver, heart, lungs, stomach, are prized delicacies. Scarce reindeer milk is mixed with tea or stored frozen. Summer berries frozen and saved to prevent scurvy. The diet is monotonous, completely lacking fresh vegetables for 8 or 9 months of winter. Many people grow up never tasting fresh carrots, cabbage, or potatoes during the long cold season. To get anything more varied, a fresh apple, an orange, a few onions, a packet of pasta, a carton of milk, people must undertake the most luxurious and dangerous journey of the year, to Yakutsk, the nearest city with markets and supermarkets, about 900 kilometers away. The trip usually takes 18 to 30 hours if the road is good and the weather holds. But with blizzards, temperatures below -60, ice-covered roads, it can stretch to 3 to 7 days, or leave you stranded for weeks. Many families make the journey only once or twice each winter, sometimes only once a year. The cost is enormous. Extra fuel drums because gas stations are almost non-existent along the way. Vehicles frequently break down. Dead batteries, frozen oil, cracked tires, failed heating systems. The risk of freezing to death if the engine dies in the middle of nowhere, or crashing into ice holes, flipping on slick ice. Many have perished on what's called the Road of Bones. That's why a trip to Yakutsk for groceries is treated almost like a perilous pilgrimage. Things that are ordinary elsewhere become true luxuries here. Fresh fruit like apples, oranges, bananas, fresh vegetables like tomatoes, cucumbers, cabbage, onions, packaged milk, cheese, butter, candy, cookies, chocolate, white rice, pasta, imported canned goods, soda, bottled juice. A single fresh orange can costs 3 times more than elsewhere, yet for people here it tastes better than the finest vodka. Children sometimes stay happy for a whole week just because they got to eat 1 fresh apple. People don't dare long for those things too much. Longing without fulfillment only makes the heart heavier. They've grown accustomed to eating little, eating simply, eating to live. Many elders say their bodies have adapted to the cold and the mild, constant hunger, so they don't feel deprivation the way outsiders would. But when a Yakutsk trip succeeds and brings back a few fresh vegetables or fruits, it becomes a huge family joy, the rare moment they taste something called variety in food.